You probably think you're being smart with money, comparing prices, switching delivery apps to save $3, skipping the coffee, packing lunch every day, and it looks responsible, disciplined, even. But here's what nobody told you. That behavior might be quietly making you dumber. Not in some vague, motivational poster way, neurologically, measurably, in a way that shows up on a test. Then I came across a study that completely changed how I think about money. Harvard and Princeton ran cognitive tests on the same group of people twice. Once when they were stressed about money, once when they weren't. Same people, different mental state. IQ dropped by 13 to 14 points. Not a rounding error, not a margin of variance. 13 to 14 points. The same cognitive drop as pulling an all-nighter. Your brain under financial stress literally performs like your brain on no sleep. The researchers called it bandwidth taxation. Your brain is a processor. When it's running background tasks, how do I cover rent? Can I float this bill? Will I make it to Friday? Those tasks consume working memory. You have less left over for judgment, for creativity, for seeing anything beyond the immediate problem in front of you. Now here's the part that changes everything. You don't have to actually be broke for this to happen. When you spend 20 minutes comparing apps to save $3, when you feel genuine anxiety over a $15 purchase, when you agonize every time you consider spending money on yourself, you are manufacturing that exact same mental state, voluntarily, on purpose. You're not being disciplined. You're taxing your own brain and calling it a virtue. And here's what makes it genuinely dangerous. That scarcity mindset doesn't stay in your wallet. It spreads into how you see your time, into whether you say yes to things that cost something up front, into whether you bet on yourself at all. You train your brain to look for savings in everything, and eventually it applies that same lens to every decision you make, including the ones that actually determine where your life goes. And that's just the first problem. I want to show you something specific. Two people, same income, same starting point, 10 years later, completely different outcomes. Person A tracks every dollar, cuts every unnecessary expense. Nothing leaks. Over a decade, they've saved a real amount. They're proud of it. And honestly, they should be. It took real discipline. 10 years later, person A has an extra few $1,000s in the bank. Person B is less precise about small stuff, doesn't comparison shop for groceries, pays for convenience sometimes. But every few years, they make one significant move, a skill they invest in seriously, a relationship they cultivate over time, a professional decision they approach with full clarity and full commitment, because they still have the mental energy left to actually think it through. 10 years later, person B has a career they couldn't have imagined when they started. Person A has savings. Person B has a different life. Here's what most people miss. Person B didn't get lucky. They didn't earn more. They protected something that person A was spending down without realizing it. The cognitive and emotional capacity to recognize a real opportunity and actually act on it. And here's why almost everyone gets this wrong. You've probably heard of the latte factor. The idea that your daily coffee habit is the reason you're not wealthy. Skip the latte, invest the difference, watch the math work out. It's spread not because it's true. It's spread because it's emotionally satisfying. It takes something genuinely complicated, financial inequality, unequal access to opportunity, the compounding disadvantage of starting with less, and packages it into one solvable personal behavior. It tells you the system isn't the problem. Your coffee order is. But here's what the latte factor actually does to you. It directs your attention toward the smallest possible lever. And while you're pulling that lever, while you're standing in line calculating whether you can justify the coffee, you are not thinking about the decisions that could actually change your situation. The career move, the skill you keep saying you'll learn, the conversation you keep putting off. Those decisions require mental clarity, long-term thinking, the ability to tolerate short-term costs for long-term return. Chronic penny pinching erodes exactly those things. One $3 decision at a time. So if that's the trap, what's the way out? This is where most people make the second mistake. They hear stop penny pinching and translate it to spend freely. That's not what this is. The shift is just a different question. Most people ask, how do I spend less? The more useful question is, what does this dollar generate? Same $100. 3 completely different outcomes. You spend it on something you consume and forget. Value returned, 0. You spend it on a book, a course, a conversation that changes how you make decisions going forward. Value returned, compounding for the rest of your life. You spend it investing in a relationship, someone who challenges you, opens doors you didn't know existed, expands what you think is possible for yourself. Value returned, incalculable. Warren Buffett said it directly. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. The number on the tag tells you almost nothing. The ratio of what you receive to what you paid tells you everything. Start treating your spending like a portfolio. What am I putting in? What does it generate? Over what time frame? When you think this way, paying for education stops feeling like an expense. Investing in your health stops feeling optional. Spending on the relationships that expand your world stops feeling indulgent. And at the same time, and this is the part people don't expect, you become genuinely allergic to low-return spending. Not because it costs money, because it quietly consumes resources you could be putting somewhere that actually builds something. That's real frugality. Not tracking every $4 purchase in a spreadsheet at midnight, making sure every dollar you release comes back carrying something. Here's the only question worth asking. Not, can I save money on this? But can this money create something bigger than itself? That's it. That's the whole shift. It sounds small, but run it consistently and it stops feeling like a question about money. It starts feeling like a question about what kind of person you're becoming and what kind of life you're actually building. Not smaller, not tighter further.